relax at the Villaggio Inn and Spa and the Vintage Inn in Yachtville, California. Call 800-351-1133. PM show nationwide, coast to coast on CRN Digital Talk Radio. I'm Michael Horn. That's Fred Dreyer, ladies and gentlemen. Give us a call at 800-336-2225. Don't forget, when you call in, we want them to stay on topic, correct?
Oh, we're taking calls?
Possibly.
Oh.
It's up to you, because I know you don't like calls.
Well, I'm more, I think, conversation-driven than I think most people are.
If they want to get in the conversation, we'll take the calls, correct?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
If they want to kind of divert the conversation to something that's off topic, we may not take that call.
Yeah. That's kind of like the way it should be. Otherwise, it's a grab bag.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Fred Dreyer, you can't argue with this man. He's
no, you can't. That's what's great about it.
You can argue with him, but you can't doing the show because he has a kind of a feel for talk radio because you've listened to it for years, correct?
Yeah, I listened to it. Like I said last time I was here, I used to come home from school and my mother would be listening to Arthur Godfrey about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd sit down and listen to it and watch her listen to it
and see what develops. I mean, you kind of like, it's a conversation on the radio one way. This way you have a phone call. You can call in if you want to get in the conversation.
Yeah. The image of a young kid of looking at his mother listening to talk radio was a very strong one for me. I don't know why, but it's one of the images that I have of my mother.
Where'd you grow up? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Hawthorne, California. Raised in Lawndale, went to Lawndale High School, El Camino College, San Diego State, that circuitry. But I was South Bay kid, Manhattan Beach.
South Bay, and your mom listened to talk radio. Can you remember the Arthur Godfrey she listened to on the radio?
She was listening to Arthur Godfrey on the radio, and there was a whole cadre of programming from the early morning, from 6, 7 o'clock.
And she would tune it in, right?
And I'd listen to it in the morning when I got up, and then she'd listen to it all day, and then when I come home, it was time for Arthur Godfrey, and then it was time for my dad to come home, time for dinner, and the radio went off, and
the TV came on.
No, it didn't.
It didn't?
No.
Oh, no TV?
No, my father just said, no TV while we're eating, and maybe we can turn a program on later on, but you do your homework.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, we used to sometimes get the TV trays and maybe watch the early show while we were dining.
Yeah, it never happened.
Never happened.
Never happened.
Wow. Ever.
No, my dad and my mother actually would never, ever tolerate it.
Really?
Yeah.
So, and we had good family meals, but that would be like a special deal in the living room. We'd have a TV tray, and maybe once a week, if it was a good John Wayne Western, we'd watch it.
No,
never happened.
No, it was never. TV was monitored pretty well, and fairly so.
What about now? Do you watch TV now?
No. Well, I do.
I mean, you're a TV star.
Well, that's not so much it. I mean, it's one of the reasons I don't watch TV is because it doesn't talk to me like it did when I was doing it.
So it talked to you more when you were doing it because you were doing a show and getting feedback from the other actors, right?
Well, it was. I think it was a different show. The 1 hour format today is procedural and boring and talking heads and what have you, well-produced shows. But I've always liked, get out in the middle of the street. You shoot a show for 7 or 8 days, and you're out on the street for 5 of those days, and you feel like you're watching characters move in the city that you know, and storytelling was different. It was action driven, and people, I threw people off of buildings and shot them and chased them, and alley fights and barroom fights, and those are the types of things. It was cowboys and Indians, from '84 to '91 on our show, and it was a lot of fun to do. And most of the stuff today, as I say, although well produced, are boring, and the procedural, the preponderance of the pondering is overwhelming.
Okay, so you like the conversation. You were, as a kid, you heard your mom, you listened to the radio. You seem to like talk radio. You like that kind of developing the conversation. just walk me through this. How do you fit into becoming an actor? Because as a star, as an athlete, as a football player, you and I have talked off the air. It seemed like you got your head into game day. Practicing was one kind of a thought process, which I'd love to get into one day with you. Game day was another thought process where it was your day to shine on your show. How do you go from you focus? You're very analytical. How do you go from that type of thing to getting into acting, which is completely make-believe? You become like a role or something. How did you get into TV? What was the first little taste that you had, and then why did you get into it?
Well, both require tremendous amounts of focus, concentration,
Right.
and discipline. It was kind of a nice 1-2 punch for me, leaving a physical profession that dominated and going into more of a cerebral one, where you had to hold focus, pace yourself, and really concentrate heartily throughout the day. And it's the preparation that people don't see, and the hours and the time you put into it.
So while it's a character, it's you concentrating on becoming and being that character. Kind of like you putting on your game day face, as some people would call it. It was getting into the game day, talking to the ref, doing whatever you had to do to get your mindset for game day. Similar to doing a TV show, you got to be prepared, read the script, and you become Hunter.
Yeah, that's right, and understand and coordinate the balance between what everybody else is doing, teamwork, and then you shoot it, and then you put it together, and then you deliver it, and then you move on to the next one. That process is very fulfilling, and you are directly related to the end product, just as you would a football game. I have the ability to affect the outcome of the game immediately.
So that's in your mindset. You have the ability to totally affect that outcome because you're on the field.
Yeah, and I count on that. I know when I'm preparing for a game, I know pretty much what my impact on the game can be and therefore will be.
Okay, but let's say you're retired, obviously, when you started doing Hunter. How do you go from being that person? I mean, you just don't someone say, hey, become a movie actor, TV actor, you're going to do this. How did you go from becoming that guy that was the professional guy with sports and the concentration there? What was the break? What was the start? What was it? Was it a guest shot on the show? Did somebody see it in you and say, hey, you should try this? Did you see it? What was the spark?
That was in me a long time ago. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do.
Going back to being the kid, listening to your mom on radio.
Yeah, I knew what
right?
I knew what I wanted to do for a long time.
So you knew you wanted to be that.
Yeah, I was predominantly interested in understanding and learning about the technique and the craft of acting.
So then what gets you into sports then? Maybe I'm asking the wrong question. What takes you on that turn into sports at first instead of going right into acting?
Well, that's where I was at the time.
At the time, it was sports.
It came to me, and I knew that I could do it, so I did it. That didn't mean that I couldn't do something else or I should do something else. It's just that I had
the role was sports at the time.
I had a demand that I do that sports thing.
You have an interesting mind. You could wade through that mind of Fred Dryer right now. I'm like into the first crevasse of whatever the gray matter is there. You're very interesting.
Crevasse.
Crevasse. You're very interesting to study that.
A crevasse of wine, or is that a carafe?
That is carafe.
Carafe.
But we'll have a crevasse later, I think.
All right.
Fred Dryer's here, ladies and gentlemen. It's his birthday. We're talking. We'll get to some other topics too here, but I just want to find out what makes him tick. He is the a professional extraordinaire on CRN's PM show. Stay with us.